prediction we had was essentially that as you try to tap more into foreign knowledge, you're going to rely more on offshore integration, whereas if you're just doing it for cost, it's going to be more offshore outsourcing. And so in the study, what we do is we test that by we have really wonderful data on the entire population of US multinationals in the manufacturing sector from 1989 to 2004. And we show that as the knowledge in a firm's industry becomes more global, measured by where patenting happens, firms increasingly rely on offshore integration. Interestingly, this happens only for those firms that are investing in foreign R&D, and it happens only from those countries where they are investing in R&D. So, it's really pretty compelling evidence for this idea that offshore integration is really about knowledge seeking more than it is about cost seeking. And then we also show that the cost seeking story really plays out with offshore outsourcing. So as cost pressures in your industry go up, if you're not the top firm, you see a lot of increase in offshore outsourcing. And you see that start to accelerate as IT infrastructure builds up. And so you can monitor these third-party suppliers in these countries much better through the internet, through all sorts of connections. A lot of the literature essentially treats offshore integration and offshore outsourcing is more or less equivalent, right? So, it's sourcing from abroad. It doesn't really matter. We don't really have a good theory for why you would do it in-house versus why you would do it through third parties. And this paper is really providing a very clear distinction between those two, saying they're really driven by different strategies and different motives. I think the other part of it is that there is a lot of recognition of the fact that firms are trying to use foreign knowledge and tap into foreign knowledge and expertise, but that hasn't really spilled over into manufacturing so much, right? So we know firms do R&D abroad, but the fact that that may actually have implications for where you source from is actually is a completely new idea. Well, I won't say completely new idea, but somewhat new idea in that certainly hasn't been shown. And then I think just the fact that so much of the sourcing actually comes from developed countries is a shock, right? You read the newspaper, you wouldn't think that's the case. But a lot of what the newspaper is capturing is actually a very fringe phenomenon where, of course, you have some sourcing from Vietnam or Bangladesh, but that's not the bulk of where US firms source from. So I think it's really giving us a completely different insight on what's actually happening with global sourcing. I also think it has implications for policy. So if you think about, the competitiveness of US industry in a globalizing marketplace, again, I think a lot of the rhetoric there tends to be about, it's cheap labor that's stealing away our jobs. And we're saying, well, actually, in a lot of cases, it may be science and innovation that's stealing away the jobs. And that's actually something we may want to think about as we think about the competitiveness of the United States.